Welcome to our View of the World, Episode 1. My name is JP, and today we will talk about why we as humans created science. And we will be interviewing Victor as a guest on this podcast. We will have another guest later in this podcast that we will introduce in a little bit. We will also have a second interview and even a trivia game. I think people naturally want to know what's going on around them. I think people having more knowledge of the world makes us feel safer about our environment, because I don't think we feel safe not knowing what's going on around us. I think we developed science to allow us to understand the world as well, because we know the more we understand, the more we can use to our advantage. I think we also started developing science ever since we began civilization. I think we just naturally think that science is important, and it's important for us to know what's going on around us. I think we were always thinking there was a little left to discover, so there is always a point in history where we're like, alright, well, I guess we just know everything at this point. But then we always learn more. Like 50 years ago, everything, all the technology we have now seemed alien 50 years ago. Nobody would have ever imagined that in 50 years people would carry around computers the size of their hand. Hello, Victor. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, are you ready for some questions?
Sure.
All right. How long do you think we have been developing science?
My guess would be probably since we started using fire, just to get an understanding as to how it would work and how to control it. That way we didn't accidentally kill everyone. That's my guess.
That's actually a unique answer. Nobody I've asked has said that. Makes sense. Why do you think we created science?
I think we created the study of science out of wanting to understand the world around us. That way we feel more comfortable. Because when we know what's going on, we can predict things and we feel more in control, which lets us feel better about it, I guess. It's really just curiosity with us wondering, hey, how does this thing work? Let's see if we can make a way to study it and research it. That way we can then understand it and know how it works, and then we can do stuff with that from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. All right. Do you think it's important that we learn science in school? If so, which field of science do you think is the most important?
I do think it's important to learn at least the basics of science within school, mostly because I feel like it's a good way to teach people how to look at the world. That way they can pick apart everything and figure out how everything works. I don't feel like it's specifically that we should be teaching individual subjects. Like, yes, everyone needs to learn bio, everyone needs to know this. Like, yeah, we should know some basics of biology for health reasons. Yeah, basis of physics would be nice. That way we know, we can predict things based off common day things. Like, hey, if I'm going to cross a street, maybe if a car is slowing down, I can assess the speed of that car and then think, is that too fast to allow them to stop if I start crossing? Stuff like that. Other than that, if we go too far into the specifics without the students wanting to do so, I feel like that isn't really necessary. Other than that, I feel like basics of science is just teaching people how to pick things apart. That way they can understand it. And in that regard, I feel like a general science class would probably be good for that, or math is a good way to learn how to deconstruct and analyze every step of how things work. So the general science class and the math class, I think, would be the important ones.
So you just believe in the basics, right? So you don't you think you should be able to choose what you learn a lot about. So you learn the basics, but you don't learn the complex things unless you want to learn the complex things.
Yeah, like you learn the basics, and then if you want to look at the more in-depth and less common day-to-day stuff, then that's when you would take a specific course for it.
Okay. What do you think the difference between the field of science and the science we learn in school?
I feel like I'm assuming the field of science is more exploratory. I don't really know, but my guess is that it's more exploratory and more about learning things that we collectively don't know, or it's using things that we do know about science to develop new material, new products, essentially. And then also advancements in medicine and doing stuff like biology, where you're learning about the human body. In the actual field of science, you're doing more exploratory stuff within looking at the body, looking at genetics to be like, all right, what gene results in this disease happening? Stuff like that is my guess. There's also stuff like, all right, I'm assuming in the field of science there's also a thing where it's like, hey, we have this pre-existing thing, let's actually analyze it, do a lot of research on this pre-existing thing that we already know, that we can fully understand it, and then take it to the next level. So it's like, all right, we know all of the physics about a car. Let's look really in depth, know everything that we can understand, and take a car to be a rocket ship or something like that. Would be my guess. While in school, science is again the basics that we already know. Maybe a little bit of, hey, this is how we got to that point. That way you can then know how to go further from what we are taught in school in the actual field of science. That's my guess. I don't know.
Again, we're just looking for opinions here, but yeah, thanks for that long answer, Victor.
Sorry.
All right. No, that's fine. One more. When you hear the word world, do you think of Earth or everything? Or somewhere in between or something? I don't know.
When I hear the word world, I feel like world would be, to me, I feel like world would be a planet with inhabitants, I guess. That's what makes sense to me. A planet with living things on it is a world. Probably not, but that's what I think. And if you were to say the world, then I think Earth, but
Okay. All right. So science is basically our interpretation of the world, and we developed it because we have a need to discover things around our environment. Thank you, Victor, for your interview. Hello, Brayden. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great.
That's awesome. Are you ready for an interview?
I'm ready.
All right. How long do you think humans have been developing science?
Science, probably 100,000 years.
That's an exact number. That's an interesting perspective. Do you feel like the science you learn in school will be useful in the real world?
Well, it really all depends on your job. Like, if you're going into, like, a science and engineering perspective, then probably. But if you're not, maybe not.
Okay. What part of science and technology do you think is becoming the most advanced?
Ooh, probably AI, because people have been getting really good with those and making, like, music and stuff with AI now, and it's getting really good.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that in the news, and people are talking about it. Like, apparently there's, like, a Snapchat AI that a bunch of people are screwing around with. People are, like, trying to name their animals using the Snapchat thing. And my brother actually told me about somebody prompted an AI to make a song.
Yeah, people are making songs with AI, so they're, like, recreating artists' voice and stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. I definitely agree that the AI world is definitely advancing really quickly, and just technology in general. Like,
Yeah.
everybody carries around a phone now, and just tap it, and it does basically whatever you want it to do. Order food, yeah, you
Yeah.
got it.
It's basically like the most powerful device we have now in your pocket, and that's just crazy.
Yeah, some people have told me like that they use less technology to launch they use less like computing power to launch the first rocket into space than you have on your little phone. Like,
Yeah, it had like less computing power than a TI-84 calculator.
yeah, it's pretty awesome how they were able to do that, but it's also pretty awesome how much power we have. But we got to use it carefully.
Yeah, really, because it can get scary if you like put it into the wrong hands.
Yeah, like TikTok, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You don't know who's watching you on those things. Like, I've heard like some people were talking about how they were just having a conversation with their friends about something, and then all of a sudden, boop, they get a commercial for that exact thing they were talking about. Like,
Oh yeah, they're listening to you. They're trying to figure out what products you want so you can buy them.
yeah, they really they really suck off the people who just, ooh, what's this? Buy it. Like, gotta be
Yeah.
careful.
You really got to be careful about what you say around these things, because like you could say anything and then you see like ads and videos about it.
Mm-hmm. All right, ready for another question?
Yep.
What advancement do you think has had the most impact on human species?
Ooh, that's a really tough one. Advancement probably from stone to like metal tools, because like the advancement with those tools is there's a lot of metal being used today, and exactly what we're recording on these mics are made out of metal. Like,
Yeah.
it's really gone a long way since that first metal, and I really think it's the best advancement.
Yeah, you can't really imagine a world without metal, can you?
It's not really. I mean, the wheel and fire are like really important and stuff. Like, but it really comes down to like the chicken and the egg conversation with it's whatever you think.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have metal without fire. You can have fire without metal, but you can't develop into today's society without either of them. It's ridiculous. Like, you can't support a large building without metal, but yet you can't have a light without fire.
Yeah.
Right? So I got one more question, then we'll do a trivia game afterwards.
All right.
When you hear the word world, what do you think of? Do you think of everything in existence, just like the solar system, or just like Earth? Or somewhere in between? Anything.
Just Earth, like, and like the globe and all that. That's what I think about when I hear world, because that's usually what's mentioned when people say world.
All right. Ready for a trivia game about human history and the history of the world?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. So, how long ago do you think people have been creating civilizations?
Ooh, like 3 million years ago?
The answer is actually around 3000 BCE to 4000 BCE, so only about 5,000 to 6,000 years ago.
Really, that seems way too recent for that.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, when you think of a civilization, there's like people gathering in groups, which I'm sure we've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
However, then there's civilization, where like the one thing that is key to a civilization is agriculture. And all right, so one of the first civilizations was in Mesopotamia between the
Mhm.
Euphrates and Tigris River. The rivers created fertile soil that allowed the people to farm and get a reliable food source, which is obviously very important for a large group of people. This allowed the people to stay in one place for the first time, and instead of having to constantly move around with the food. That question kind of ties into this next question.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you believe humans have existed, evolved how they are?
Maybe around 50,000 years. It's really hasn't been that long. We've been evolving over time.
So, I mean, all things considered, I guess you were pretty close, considering that it was 300,000 years ago. But it took us a very long time to evolve into what we are now. And yeah, and we evolved from a species similar to apes. Oh, and this is just a side question. Do you know what the difference between a monkey and an ape is?
The thing on their forehead, right?
It's actually one of them has a tail and one of them does not.
Oh, really?
Can you guess which one?
The monkey has the tail.
Yep. A monkey does have the tail. Apes do not have tails, and obviously we have a tailbone, but we don't really have a tail, and that's why we evolved from apes instead of evolving from monkeys. Well, we could have evolved from monkeys, but I mean, more
we wouldn't
related to apes.
We'd be more mobile if we evolved from monkeys and less intelligent if we evolved from apes, I think.
Yeah. We might also be arboreal, which means we are in trees and stuff, because that's basically what they're meant for. Tails are really good for balance, and if you have a prehensile tail, it allows you to like grab stuff sort of with your tail, you know? All right. Another question. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Sure?
Yep.
Absolutely sure?
Absolutely sure.
All right. How old do you think the planet Earth is?
Oh, I've been taught this for many, many years. It's 4.5 billion years old.
You are absolutely right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it could be 4.51 billion years. No, I'm kidding. No. You're probably right. I don't know. But it is 4.5 billion years. And do you know how long out of that life has existed?
3.5 billion years?
Very close. 3.7 billion years. And actually, you know what the first life forms were?
There were things at the bottom of the ocean. They were little bacteria bugs.
Bacteria. Yep. So, out of those 3.7 billion years that life has existed, do you know how long it took for multicellular organisms to evolve?
Oh, 100,000 years.
100,000 years since the 3.7 billion? Or just it was 100,000 years ago?
100,000 years ago. Oh my God, that was probably terrible. That was an awful answer.
Keep in mind, humans have
right.
existed for 300,000.
Probably 2 billion then.
2 billion years?
Yeah.
It's actually 600,000 years ago.
Wow.
So humans have been evolved as they are for about half the time that multicellular organisms have existed.
That's really crazy how it took only 3,000 years since then.
Only 300,000 years,
Only.
Brayden.
Yeah.
All right. So. All right. Today in this podcast, we talked about human history, why we created science, and even a little bit about modern science and what we learn in school and what we do in the workplace. We also talked about when the first human civilizations were created and how long humans have existed. In addition, we also talked about the history of the planet and the 4.5 billion years life has existed, and the 600,000 years that multicellular organisms have existed on Earth. Thank you to Brayden and Victor for your interview and the trivia game. I think that was really good. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you like this episode or topic, check out some more episodes. No need to subscribe.